Frank Sinatra and John F. Kennedy. Most people don't know these two very influential individuals knew each other and were actually pretty good friends. Well, until something happened between them, but we'll get to that later. This is John, and today I'm here to talk to you about the complicated friendship between the legendary entertainer Frank Sinatra and the legendary 35th President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The beginning of their friendship is kind of hard to exactly pinpoint, but they met around the year 1960. Frank Sinatra had met Jack through fellow Rat Pack member Peter Lawford, who had married Jack's sister, Patricia Kennedy, in 1954, and therefore had access to the then Massachusetts senator. The two hit it off and became pretty good friends. They hung out in Las Vegas, where Sinatra introduced him to some ladies too. Frank really wanted Jack to become president because he thought the idea of being buddies with the president was cool. Well, who wouldn't? So Frank wanted to help out however he could. He recorded a special version of High Hopes for Jack, which was actually pretty catchy. Take a listen.
Everyone is voting for Jack, 'cause he's got what all the rest lack. Everyone wants to back Jack. Jack is on the right track, 'cause he's got...
Pretty good, right? So, Sinatra was also close friends with Sam Giancana, which would later come to bite him in the butt, but we'll talk about that soon enough. Giancana had great influence over Chicago and the Chicago area. Sinatra helped sway Giancana in Jack's favor and also helped Joe Kennedy set up a meeting with Giancana to discuss his support for Jack and help resolve a problem with another mobster in return for the president's ear. The president's ear? Now, Joe had made Giancana an offer he couldn't refuse. When the election came around, the state of Illinois did go to Kennedy, and the election was pretty close, so states like Illinois swung the election in Jack's favor. However, when Jack got into office in January, Giancana and his mob's influence were not welcome at all. Not to mention that the Kennedy administration was responsible for bringing the number of mob convictions from 35 in 1960 to 288 in 1963. The one having to pay for this was none other than Sinatra, who worked hard to get back into a favorable position with Giancana. Here's where things get interesting. March 1962. Jack Kennedy is in his office and planned a weekend trip to his friend Frank's place in Palm Springs, California. March 24th to 26th was the set date, and they had a long-standing arrangement. Sinatra had prepared for the president's stay extensively. He purchased extra land and built cottages for the president and his Secret Service men, installed an ultra-modern phone system with 25 extra phone lines and enough cable to accommodate teletype facilities, a switchboard, and a concrete helicopter landing pad. He even had a presidential flagpole erected on the property. Nothing was too good for the president, and Sinatra went all out. However, as the date of the president's visit approached, concerns began to rise. Bobby Kennedy, JFK's brother and attorney general, became anxious about Sinatra's image as a hoodlum with links to organized crime and what that could mean if the president stayed at his place. Bobby had a discussion with the president and persuaded him to call off his stay at Sinatra's place. But who would be the one to break this devastating news to Frank? Peter Lawford. Before he broke the news to Sinatra, he called the president to try to convince him to reconsider, but Jack was adamant and said that it wouldn't be right for the U.S. president to stay at the home of a man who hosted members of organized crime. When Lawford told Sinatra this, he went ballistic. He blamed Lawford for everything, cussed him and Bobby out, didn't speak to him after, and completely X'd him out of the Rat Pack. And not only was Jack not going to spend the weekend at Sinatra's, but he was instead going to stay at the home of Bing Crosby, another famous singer living in Palm Springs, and a Republican to boot. Come on, man. Frank didn't stop at name-calling and cutting ties. He took a sledgehammer and swung at many of the items he had bought for the presidential visit, some of his own possessions, and even started whacking at the heliport he had purchased. The president personally called Sinatra when he arrived in Palm Springs and told him that the reason for the change was a matter of security, and even invited him over to Crosby's place. But Sinatra didn't buy that excuse and declined the offer. And that effectively ended their relationship. So what'd you think? Leave a comment in the comment box below. Don't forget to rate and subscribe too.